Good evening, everyone. Owens, Superintendent here, Indian River School District. I met some of you as you came in, so welcome. Thank you for being here and for your interest in our referendum. I'm going to frame it up here in just a minute and kind of just go through some things that we've experienced, some questions we've experienced over the last couple months as we've done some of these presentations. But I do want to acknowledge we have folks joining us online. So we will be taking questions online as well. Our team in the back will be responding. And any questions that maybe aren't covered here or we think will be vital to this group, we'll make sure we read those aloud as well. We're going to cover quite a bit of information pretty quickly, but we are going to leave time at the end for any questions you may have. If you do have questions, we ask you go to the podium so we can capture the audio for those joining us online. All right, let's jump right in. So it's important to know in Delaware how this referendum process works. So in order to generate additional revenue for our school district, we need to, from time to time, go out to a referendum. There are two types of referendum, and they're sometimes confused during this time when we're going out to a new one. Current expense, and that's what we're asking for through this process. And our last current expense referendum was 2017, 8 years ago. We also have the ability to go out to a capital expense referendum. That was more recently, that was 2020. That capital expense referendum was to build the building that you saw as you came in next door. It is almost complete. It is on schedule, scheduled to be complete in the fall. That's the new Sussex Central High School. So that process was necessary because this building, built for 1,500, currently has 2,000 students. And the school built next door will be able to accommodate that level of students. This building will be vacated and the Millsboro Middle School will populate this building in the fall. That leaves that building vacated and open for what we believe to be will be an elementary school at some point, but we will have a year pause at least to determine what's the best use for that facility based on the needs of the entire district. So I like to explain that because there is some confusion of which referendum this is about and when was our last one. So again, 8 years. I say that because, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail, typically in Delaware, school districts go out to a referendum every 3 to 5 years. In our school district, it's usually right around that 5-year mark. We've been able to extend this a little longer than that 5 years into this 8-year mark, in large part, we believe, due to the federal funding that we received through after COVID through those ESSER funding. So that funding can be, we were able to use that for all the way to things like our cooling towers and our HVAC to make sure our schools were efficient. So I just like to give you that information to kind of frame up why we're here today. All right, this referendum is 2 parts. It's just one question, so your ballot will have a yes or a no, but it is indeed 2 parts. Increased operating expenses, so those are the same expenses that you experience right now. You know, things have gone up and have escalated for some time now. We are not unlike every household in our area, so those costs go up and we need to address that. In addition, it is recruitment and retention of staff. So over the last couple years, we have been able to hire nearly 100% of our staffing positions, which is very uncommon. Certainly nationally, there's a teaching shortage. However, we've been able to hire, and same in Delaware. I know some of my colleagues in Kent and Newcastle County really struggle to fill those teaching positions. And that's vitally important because we want good teachers in front of our students at all levels. But we do know we have some areas that are very specialized, our world languages, science, math, et cetera. But I could also make a very good argument, your 3rd grade teacher, you need a highly qualified teacher in front of students daily. And we want to make sure we continue to staff those classrooms and all of our staffing areas based on a solid negotiated contractual package that's part of this. It's contingent upon this referendum. Okay, I touched on this a little while ago, but the percentages are here. On average, the last 3 years, our expenses have increased 7.4%, while our revenue has remained on average around that 3.5 mark. And those expenses, these are our big ticket expenses. They're typically our utilities, obviously, overall energy, transportation costs, and substitute costs. Our substitute costs this year for around $2 million, so it's substantial. So you can see those are our big ticket items, but really those operating costs could be almost anything. In addition, we talked about that competitive salary package. Right now, our teachers package is right around the mid to upper range in the county, and we want to make sure we remain competitive. We want teachers to come and stay at Indian River, and we can only do that by offering a good salary package for our team. Oops, I hit it. Yep, let me go back. All right, I talked about that first bullet. Again, it's been since 2017 since we were added current expense referendum. The additional revenue is needed so we can need to run as efficiently as we want to run. And staff reductions occur even with this referendum. So we've made some reductions. We've started a district office looking to see where we could consolidate positions. If folks are retiring, how can we merge certain responsibilities, as well as just overall reductions. And we're looking at that through our natural RIF process that occurs every year. However, we're taking a really hard look just to make sure we are being as responsible as possible with our expenditures. What have we done to save money? This is just a small list, but we wanted to highlight a few things. One thing on here, that ESCO project, I talked about the energy efficiency there during the COVID process. Even before that, we entered into an energy savings initiative with a company. It looks at our internal monitoring system to ensure that we are alerted when things are not running efficiently and to help to maintain, our temperatures in our classrooms, et cetera. So that allows us to be energy efficient, one, but also is a cost savings measure and allows us to get rebates. So it's certainly a needed task that we undertook a while back. Federal E-rate funding, that's the use of the state's federal funding system to get our technology. So that provides us with the best costs for things like smart boards and Chromebooks, et cetera. So again, a cost savings measure, all the way down to things that seem a little smaller, like transitioning from Zoom to the Teams platform. That actually saves us $40,000. So some big ticket items up here, and also some smaller items. Again, it all adds up, and it's important to be our fiscal stewardship. All right, I like to brag during these meetings as well, because it's important to, we try to highlight the successes of our schools and our staff, but sometimes it goes overlooked. A couple things I'll highlight on here is one, the Blue Ribbon schools. Those are national awards, and those are very, very difficult to get. We have some schools in our school district that have received a Blue Ribbon Award a couple times. And I believe we've got 12 in the last 20 years or so Blue Ribbons. And that is a very, very tough some amazing recognitions as well. And I go back to, again, the ask of this referendum is to ensure that we are compensating our teachers the way that they should be. And all these things do not happen, and the success doesn't happen without amazing teachers in our classrooms, and we have a lot of them. Again, some additional successes here. You can see some state championships. Indian River High School is just coming hot off the press, a unified basketball state championship. So really, really proud of what is able to happen, not only in our classrooms, but outside of our classrooms. Schools, we put a lot of time and energy, as we should, into the academic elements of our classrooms. But sometimes we forget, unless you're living. If you're that parent and you see it every day, or that kid that's experiencing it, there's a lot that happens both before school and after school. Clubs, athletics, the arts. In school, things that are happening that we don't always see is the work of our nurses, the work of our social workers, the support staff that make sure when you come in that you're fed or will be fed, et cetera. Again, great people in our schools. These schools are the cornerstones of our various communities, and we want to make sure they are solid places for students to learn, to play, to just grow as an individual. So I'll speak to this and then we'll dive a little deeper into it. But Indian River High School just last year, this is last year's stats, $8.8 million in scholarships. Sussex Central, $5.68 million in scholarships. Again, doesn't happen without strong academics within our classrooms, strong teachers, and the students, as evidenced through the funding that they have earned, are receiving a solid education. And we wanted to highlight some of the great colleges and universities that these students are moving on to. I'll also share, we have a lot of students that leave us, our two high schools, go into trade schools, go to nursing school, go into the military, go right into the workforce, and we want to make sure we are providing a well-rounded educational experience for all of our students. At our two high schools, we've got many pathways, career tech pathways, business, technology, nursing, teaching pathway. What am I missing? Well, agriculture, so our FFA structures, our building pathway. So technology, I think, yeah. So I want to just share the experience that we are trying to offer here at our two high schools and in our elementary schools, but just to ensure that our students are prepared and ready for life after high school once they graduate. All right, I'll skip this one and go to this slide because this illustrates it a little better. So I talked about that cycle of referendum when I opened here. And back in 2015, 2016, we were experiencing deficits much like we are now, and we were into that deficit spending, that yellow area that you see there. So again, we were preparing for a referendum. Prior to that, in 2017, we went out to a referendum. We were unsuccessful on the first try. We went back out and we were successful, and that puts us up into that green surplus area. And we try to use fiscal stewardship while we're in that time frame over several years. And again, I mentioned those ESSER, those federal funds through COVID. They extended us out to where we are today. A couple years ago, as we're reviewing our finances, and even prior to that, we've got a finance committee, we've got a board that reviews those monthly. We also have a community budget oversight committee made up of 10 members of our community that help to monitor, to audit us, to be updated. Those meetings are quarterly, Tammy, correct? So that team a couple years ago, Mrs. Smith and her financial team said, hey, it's time to consider referendum. It's time to begin the planning process for that, which we did, and that brings us to today. So the last thing before I move on from this, that deficit spending doesn't go away. It continues to be there until we go back to that referendum, until we're successful. We can generate those additional revenues, get back to that surplus phase, and then the process starts over. Again, I hope that through this package, which it's robust, we recognize that this allows us to go several years before we ever need to come back to the community for a referendum ask again. I can tell you, I spoke to the superintendent at Appoquinimink School District a couple weeks ago, and he said, Jay, we are every 3 years, it's part of our strategic plan. We are going back to our community with a referendum, and it's just, that's what we do, and it's adjusted. Sometimes the rate is a little different than others, depending on our growth and depending on the need, but typically it's every 3 years. That has not been our system here. I don't know if our community has an appetite for that, maybe. But what we have heard is, look, don't come back to us for a referendum until you absolutely need it. So that's where we are now. Per pupil expenditures, Indian River, you can see where we are in relation to the Sussex County school districts, and then our tax rate. You can see 3.23. We're at the bottom of the county, and we have been at the bottom for as long as I've been around, and that's some time. So I can tell you, if this referendum is successful, we'll pull back up into the middle around the Laurel-Milford range. But just today, I heard from some of my Sussex County colleagues that they're going to referendum here in the next couple years as well. So again, that will adjust out. And I know reassessment is on your mind. We have several slides associated with reassessment and how it relates to this as well. So that's coming up. But I just wanted to just see where our rate is compared to the county. Mrs. Smith will go over the next slide or two. Mrs. Smith is our Director of Finance, and she's done a lot of work with this referendum in preparation, and she'll explain this and then kind of go into more of the reassessment aspect.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to our meeting tonight. So I'll explain the way this works in Delaware. About 65% of the funds we get every year comes from the state. So it's funded through our annual unit count process where we count the students, it's student enrollment, and that converts to units, which means teachers and paras and all of our staffing levels. There's ratios that are set in Delaware code that define that. There's additional state money through grants and things that come, but like I said, that's about 35% of our funding. 65% of our funding. About 5% is federal funds, and then the balance is made up of local funds. And that is through the tax rates that are set every year by the school board. We're currently collecting 4 components of that. The current expense rate currently is $2.35. That's the rate that we're talking about tonight that would change with a successful referendum. And that money is used to fund the local share of our salaries. The state pays a portion of the salaries, and then we make up the rest of it with local funds. It's also used to pay anything else operating, so utilities, instructional materials, custodial supplies, constable salaries, all the things that would go into normal operations. Our debt service rate is initiated through the major capital referendum process, as Dr. Owens mentioned, with the new Sussex Central High School, and that rate is set every year based on the principal and interest payments that are due on those construction projects. When there's a construction project, a 20-year bond is issued by the state, and then we have to repay that. The tuition rate is set by the board every year, and students and approved tuition programs through the state. So for example, those funds are used for students that we are sending to other programs. Like we send students out to the Sussex Consortium at Cape for additional services. We have students that go to the Delaware School for the Deaf in Christiana School District, but it's also supporting students here in our buildings with salaries and supplies and materials. The minor capital improvements rate are funds that we receive from the state for repairs and maintenance to our buildings and grounds every year. They are a 60-40 split with the state. So the state gives us 60% every year, and we're required to make that 40% match in order to have access to those funds. So currently that adds up to $3.23.4. There are additional match taxes available to us that we are currently not collecting. Our school board's philosophy is to have that go through the current expense process and have the taxpayers have the say in those collections. So setting all of that aside for right now, let's talk about reassessment. It's one of the biggest things that have been on all of our minds since that process started, and one of the things that we found has the most questions around it. So this conversation is putting referendum aside and for now. If you're not aware, the reassessment process started because the 3 counties were sued because the reassessments were so old. Sussex County is 1974, but for Kent and Newcastle, it was in the 80s and 70s as well last time that was done. So the county started that process a couple years ago, bringing it up to 2023 values. There is information on Sussex County's website with videos and information if you have any additional questions as well. One of the biggest questions we get is, hey, you're going to get so much more money through this reassessment process. Why are you going to referendum? The fact is that the reassessment doesn't impact the referendum. It doesn't impact the dollars that we're going to receive. By law, reassessments must be revenue neutral to the school districts and to the county. Now, there is a caveat in law that allows the county to collect 15% additional revenue and school districts 10% additional revenue in the year of reassessment. And that's a provision that was put in because of appeals and delinquencies and growth and all the things that are happening. A couple weeks ago at our school board meeting, our board voted to not take the 10% if the current expense referendum passes. We were getting a lot of questions of, hey, I'm going to vote for this referendum, and then you could stick another 10% on top of me. So our board said, look, we want to, calm those concerns, and we are not going to take that 10% if the referendum passes. It's important to note that when we say revenue neutral, it's to the revenue collected by the school district. And I'll show you an example in a minute, but that is not to the individual taxpayer. Those reassessments and your personal changes in your taxes all depend on how your property was assessed based on the 1974 numbers versus the 2023 values. So what's happened over time is as houses are built, building permits are issued, the county has had to do a calculation from today's values back to those 1974 values. So over time, it's gotten wonky with how that works. One of the examples I use is if Dr. Owens and I were building the exact same house, but I built mine 10 years ago when the prices were lower. He builds his today when they're higher, and maybe 10 years ago it was a $250,000 house, but today it's a $400,000. So of course, when you calculate those numbers back to those 1974 values, making those values all be equitable across all of our taxpayers. With that, what we will do is adjust those rates down. So a lot of calls we're getting are, hey, I'm applying that $3.23 to my new assessment of $500,000, and now suddenly my taxes are going up $16,000. Through the information that we have gotten from the county and analyzed, that is not going to be the case because we are reducing that tax amount, the $3.23. Okay, I've gone through all of that. So here's the example, and it may be a little hard to see, but for 2024, we're slated to collect about $46 million in current expense operating dollars. And I know that sounds like a lot, but to put it into perspective, we're a large district. We have 15 schools, 1,700 employees. Our local payroll is hitting about $3.5 million per month. So those funds, that $46 million gets eaten up very quickly, and then what's left over is available to do those other operating expenses like supplies and utilities. So for the 1974 values, prior to this reassessment, our assessed value for the district was just under $2 billion. When we calculate those rates, that ends up being $2.35 per $100 of assessed value. Now, fast forward to the summer when the new tax bills come out. With that revenue neutral law, we would collect $46 million. Now, the property values are estimated to be about $40 billion. So you can see that went up 20 times from the 1974 values. So what we do is we calculate that down to 11.52 cents per $100 of assessed value. And of course, right now that's an estimate. That $40 billion is changing every day. By law, the county had the information available as of February 15th, but there are still appeals happening. The informal appeals that we're going through Tyler Technologies is still happening. All of those letters haven't gone back out yet. The formal appeals process with the county is currently happening, so that's going to change values, and it can be up or down. The county has seen instances where someone appealed and their assessment went up. There's also other things, for example, there's legislation introduced to exempt agricultural property from paying property taxes. So as that makes its way through the legislature, all of these things are changing that $40 billion number. So right now we don't have a solid number, but using it as an estimate, it would recalculate to 11.52 cents. The calculation on the next line. Again, when we say revenue neutral, it's to the district, not to the individual taxpayers. And I will note as well that the county has that provision that they can collect an additional 15%. But as recently as last week, I spoke to their finance director and they don't intend on taking the 15%. So using that as an example, this year, our pre-reassessment, our average assessed value is about $24,000 in this district. So that equates to about a $490,000 house at the 2023 values. And you can see in that first line, that we would be paying about $564 in taxes at the old rate and the new rate. can have a $24,000 house that's now assessed at $780,000, and their taxes would go up about $330. Or a $24,000 house now assessed at $200,000, going down about $330. And at the end, it's revenue neutral because the district is still collecting $1,692. You may say, like, how is this a reality? How is this a possible scenario? And it is what we're seeing when we look at the examples. The other day, we pulled up properties valued at $560,000, and there were about 8 of them. And those property values range from $14,000, $15,000 to $50,000. And it all goes back to what I said earlier about the calculation back, and it's wonky. Another example I give is you could have had like a 1950s cottage, and in 1980 something, it was along the water, and it was in the middle of a farm field, and it was in the middle of nowhere, and there weren't restaurants, and there weren't services, and nobody really wanted to live there. But over time, it's become developed. There's services and there's restaurants and all of those things. So now, of course, the property value goes up because of the property values around you. So through that discussion, what I mean when I say property taxes are going up or down, I mean that there are properties that were previously underassessed. We are seeing that happening with commercial properties and some others that would see a tax increase, and houses that were previously overassessed would get tax relief. The information that we've received from the county and that we've analyzed, we're seeing that even after referendum, about 52% of our properties will be paying less taxes next year than they did this year, or not more than a $100 increase. The county now on their website, on that reassessment website, has a calculator that will give you a range estimate of what your taxes would look like for next year. There will be other assessments like a tax ditch or a sewer assessment, but in general, the property tax bills encompass the school district in which you live, Sussex Tech High School, and Sussex County. That calculator on the county's website is a range because, like I said, those assessed values are changing and there's things happening with that. But we have piggybacked off of that and put a calculator on our website that shows the impact of the referendum. So you can go on. There's a link for you to find your new assessed value if you don't still have that paper that was mailed out from Tyler Technologies. It shows you the impact of the referendum and the new estimated total. There's also a link there where you can go to look up your property if you don't have it available to you to see what you paid last year in taxes. So we're encouraging everyone to go look at that and see what the new range shows versus what you paid last year. There is also information on Sussex County's website about tax assistance programs. So senior citizens, disabled residents, low-income families. I encourage everyone to check this out. 2 of the ones that I know best are there is a disabled veterans credit that's relatively new over the past 2 or 3 years that the state has. The senior citizen property tax credit. I don't know how well known these assistance programs are, but if it applies to you or anyone in your family, I would encourage you to get the word out. For the senior property tax credit, right now the requirements are that you be 65 or older, have been domiciled in the state of Delaware for 10 years, and there's a form you fill out, you mail it to the county. If you meet that criteria, you can receive a discount on your school taxes of 50% up to $500. What's great about that and the disabled veteran tax credit is we don't lose money to us, but certainly if you're eligible, please go out and apply and get that on your tax bill. So
All right. So unfortunately, we do have to consider, if this does not pass, what we will continue to look at. And again, programs are a big piece that we would need to consider. We've analyzed those now, and we are determining, what level of cuts would be needed. We've also looked at our before school, after school salary scales for various responsibilities. Those things will be analyzed too, as well as continue to look at our overall staffing across our school district. The one bullet that I do want to draw your attention to, and I did mention it earlier, is that deficit spending continues until we address this situation now. And again, it's part of our normal cycle, but it must be addressed. Otherwise, that deficit spending continues to occur. All right, Mrs. Smith went through this, and she might give a little bit more detail, but that is operating expenses in this package equate to $12.2 million, staff recruitment and retention, $10.2 million, for that total of $22.5 million. And then again, those cents are figures reflective of that $100 of assessed value. And then that equates to that $289 per year that we've advertised, or the $24.10 per month. Again, that's an average, and that adjustment would be made based on that tax rate adjustment after reassessment. Anything?
So the referendum is asking to generate $22.5 million. But as I talked about the rates being recalculated, when we started this process, we only had the 1974 numbers, and based on advertising requirements, that's what we had to use. So that calculated to be $1.21.05. With the new assessed values that we have now, that is recalculated down to about 5.7 cents. It would still generate the $22.5 million, but again, those rates are calculated down because of that 20 times increase in the assessed values.
Okay, polling places. You're sitting in one now, so it will be a polling place. We're going to use the auxiliary gym on the other side. That said, you can visit any one of these 8 locations, all schools except for the Millville Community Center, and it's there on Dukes Drive in Millville. So wherever you live within the district, you can vote at any one of these locations, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and again, March 20th, and we do have an inclement weather day there as well. Voter eligibility. Must be an Indian River School District resident, is a U.S. citizen, 18 years or older. Voter registration is not required in this election or referendum. Residents must provide that proof of residency or residency at each polling place. And you do not have to, this is a confusing point too, you do not have to own a home, you just must be a resident. Absentee ballots, you can see that that is quickly dwindling there, your opportunity for that, but there is in-person absentee voting available at the Department of Elections, Sussex County office until noon on Wednesday, March 19th. So you can go there now, and I believe that office is in Georgetown. So you can locate that. If you are not available on the 20th, you don't have an absentee ballot, you can go there and vote early if you so choose. And again, the Department of Elections has a lot of information on their website and their phone numbers there as well. So that's all of our information. And I'll end with where I started. Thank you for your interest in our school district and your interest here this evening and online to just learn more. Our job, as we see it, is to certainly express the need for this referendum and try to be as transparent as we can with you regarding, why it's important to us, how this package was developed, and then just the general information on how to vote on March 20th. So with that, we want to take questions. If you could, please visit the mic over here. And again, we will take questions online and our team will respond back there. And if we need to share a question that's online, happy to read that as well. Good evening.
Hi, Dr. Owens. So I don't have a question. I just have a statement to put some things into perspective for some of you guys. If you don't know me, my name is Raylan Moore, and I'm proud to be a 6th grade ELA teacher at the Indian River School District. I'm also a proud graduate of this district, and I benefited from the very support staff and students that this referendum is fighting to protect. As a former 504 student, I know firsthand how vital it is to have a team full of educators, specialists, and support staff available to meet the diverse needs of our students. If you watched the live last night, you saw Stacey Robinson spoke on behalf of nurses. She was one of my advocators. She's one of the reasons that I can stand here and speak in front of you guys today. Without them, I wouldn't be standing here today as a successful educator in the very district that shaped me and brought me back to teach in the same building that I was taught in, nor would I have been able to graduate from Sussex Central High School a year early and begin doing what I love early. Right now, my job and the jobs of many dedicated professionals are at risk. If this referendum does not pass, many teachers, paraprofessionals, custodians, nurses, and other essential staff could be at risk of losing their positions or being displaced. This means those who remain may be moved from schools where they have built relationships with students and colleagues, disrupting the stability and consistency that our kids need to succeed. As a third-year teacher who is not yet tenured, I am very aware that I could be one of those affected. But this isn't just about me. It's about those students who count on the adults in their schools every day. It's about the custodians who create a clean and safe environment, the paraprofessionals who provide one-on-one support, the nurses who ensure students stay healthy, and the teachers who show up each and every day ready to inspire. Think of the long-term impact on our community if we don't invest in our schools. I am living proof of what a fully supported, educated student in the Indian River School District can do. Our current students deserve that same opportunity, and our staff also deserves to keep doing what they love. Please support this referendum, not just for our staff, but for the future of every child in this district. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Blair Catlin Brown. I am a resident of Frankfurt. I am a school social worker here in Indian River School District. I'm a very proud vice president of Indian River Education Association, which is the teachers union. But I'm even more proud to piggyback off of Raylan's point. My son is a special education student at Southern Delaware School of the Arts. So again, thank you, Raylan, for speaking, because you're right. I'm going to tear up because my son is doing amazing because of the people who help him. Yes. So if you can't see my shirt, it says, "It's a beautiful day to support public education." So I wanted to get up to ask everyone in this room and online the question, what are you willing to do to support public education? If this monetary need will not go away, if this referendum does not pass, we will lose more staff than anyone is comfortable with. We will lose programs that our students and families love. We will lose athletic programs. We will lose extracurriculars. We will lose field trips. Ultimately, the students lose, and the district will just have to come back and ask for another referendum from everyone. We cannot tighten our proverbial belts to get our way out of this. I have seen that out there a lot. Just tighten your belts. That's not an option. I've heard anger from some in the community, but most of it is over things that the district doesn't have control over. They're county issues, they're state issues. So again, I ask you, what are you willing to do to support public education? Will you contact your elected officials and speak to them and tell them that you need them to pass the votes to change our funding system? If you don't agree with it, get active. Will you attend state and local meetings? There's a public committee right now at the state that's looking at public education funding that everyone can attend online and give public comments. Will you go to or call in to the county council meetings that meet twice a month and advocate? I have gone, come with me, to advocate for the impact fees or VSAs that all these people who are moving here, the developers, none of that money comes to the district, none of it. Will you join me and stand up and support it? Will you vote yes for this referendum so our students receive the education that they need and deserve? Please vote yes next Thursday. Please vote yes for our students.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Claire Cassell, and I'm a junior who attends Sussex Central High School. I'm involved in my school's marching band, choir, and theater. I'm currently a cast member in our musical Disaster. I've been in county band all 3 years of high school, and this year I was in senior county choir as well. As you can probably tell, the arts programs at our schools and throughout Sussex County hold a very special place in not only my heart, but as well as my fellow students and peers. Without our visual and performing arts, many people's lives would be brutally uneventful and dull. Between the excitement of warming up before a concert, the thrill and joy of marching out onto the football field at halftime, whether it's away or at home, to waiting to go on stage in the wings during a play or a musical. Those are all feelings we would not be able to feel without the wonderful arts programs we get to enjoy at our schools. Another part of my school day that holds a very special place in my heart is our teachers. I speak on behalf of the student population in the Indian River School District when I say we need our teachers. Our teachers play a huge role in supplying the proper necessities for a sufficient education, and without them, the focus many students need will not be provided, which could lead to an overall decrease in grades and sufficiency. I know myself personally, I would not be where I am today if I had not had the educators that I had, and if I were not supplied with the materials that I was needed, and also if I had not gone through with the arts programs that I had gone through. I know I speak for myself and many other students when I say we really couldn't imagine going through school without that. So I stand up here today to show you all how this looks from the perspective of a student and to express how this can impact the future generations' lives and education. Thank you. Have a very good night.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bruce Smith, and I do not work for the district. Just a couple real minor questions. You had on one of the slides, Mr. Superintendent, about substitutes. Is there a problem with attendance in the district?
So we follow the state laws in terms of leave. We have a negotiated package which determines leave, but there's also leave, family medical leave, et cetera, that is mandated by the state. So we follow those laws. So in terms of a problem, it's all up to the individual school or individual teacher, staff member, et cetera, on the number of days they are here or not. However, we must follow those laws.
I get that, but I guess I'm asking, compared to other districts, is it excessive here?
I don't have that data if it's excessive. All I can say is that we have substitutes in our buildings every day, and Mrs. Smith talked about budgeting for that. So it can be an issue, and certainly we recognize, and I mentioned this, that the best person in front of a kid every day is that teacher that's hired to be in front of them to teach the whatever the curriculum is that they're learning that day. So I will say this: anytime that the actual teacher is not in front of them, I don't think the learning is optimal.
Is your rate of pay the same as most of the schools in the county? Substitute, I'm talking substitute pay.
Yeah, so we have to pay a premium above the state substitute rate because there's such a need for substitutes across all districts, but obviously amongst our neighboring districts, that we do pay a premium above that, and we pay extra for a retired teacher to be a substitute. We pay extra for long-term sub. So if someone's out, if a teacher's out on paid parental leave for 12 weeks, what we're trying to recruit, and we've been successful at it, is to have a certified teacher who will do that long-term sub. So it's the same person for 12 weeks, or the vast majority of that, right? So it lessens the disruption to the child or the children, but that teacher, because it's not a daily substitute, right? It's that long-term. So they have to do the planning and the grading and the parent-teacher conferences and all of that. So we have found that over the past few years, we do have to pay that premium to be able to get those subs into our building. So we're not having issues with not having enough adults for all the children.
Okay. How do you have any kind of formal program for grant writing, going out and seeking grants?
It depends on the grant. So we receive federal grants that we write. We actually were working on one today. So there's several high-level grants that are annual that we look to utilize. We also have grants associated with our special education services. Again, we write those grants annually, but then we can also supply amendments to those to ask for more additional money. We do have individuals on staff that look for grants. As most recent, there was a grant that we didn't think we would qualify for additional weapons detection systems. We did write that grant, and we are in the hopefully the final phases of that. It looks like that will be successful for additional weapons detection. So certainly the instructional elements and the curricular elements through grants are first, but we're always looking for additional grants so we don't have to tap into our local expenditures.
And just as an idea, maybe you do something already. Have you ever considered a foundation?
So if I can go back for 1 second, actually breaking news, I didn't tell Dr. Owens that grant was approved yesterday and we're awaiting the award letter. So that's super exciting news. That is something that I want to explore. Not all districts have it. It has to be an outside person that is willing to do that. But that is something that I would like to explore in the future.
I had a little experience with that, and they would work with the Board of Education's approval,
Right.
but you're right, it would
Right.
be an outside
Yes.
company, but it can generate some good income.
Absolutely.
And this question might be best for you. I was absent the day they taught math, so could you please tell me the debt service?
Yes.
I assume most of that is generated by the new building. How long are we going to live with that, and will that ever go away?
So they are 20-year bonds. So when we have a construction project, our state share for those is also 40%. So the state pays 60%, and then we have to issue bonds for the 24. The state issues the bonds for us, but for the 40%. So those are 20-year bonds. Off the top of my head, I want to say there's 10 out there now. That's a rough estimate. But obviously, older projects, renovations that we did 15 years ago, we're still paying on those bonds. The good thing is we have over this year, next year, and the following year, there's 3 or 4 of them that are dropping off. So that lowers that rate. But yes, for this new school, obviously we've received the funding over 3 years. So we're in like year 1, 2, and 3 for those bonds for the new school.
Thank you. Good luck with this.
Yes, thank you so much for your questions.
I know we probably have some questions coming in online. I did want to mention, I know Ms. Catlin Brown indicated those VSA funds. So we have, as a school district, last year when the state authorized the county to consider those impact fees, our board did draft a resolution and voted on it successfully, and we did submit that to the county council to say, hey, we would greatly benefit from impact fees. It would offset some of these things that we are asking our public, and please consider that. We weren't successful last year, and I know Mrs. Smith spoke to the county council in session, and I've spoke to them as well. At our next board meeting, we do have some board members here with us this evening. At our next board meeting, I have drafted a resolution to submit again we do have new council members. So again, I'm anticipating the board voting affirmatively to move forward with that resolution to really ask the county council to consider that so those impact fees can benefit our district.
What's important to note about the impact fees, however, is those can only be used against that debt service. So either it lowers the debt service rate, which is great for taxpayers, or if we have funds available and we need to do a construction project, we could say, hey, we have enough funds set aside from the impact fees that we can do this new construction project at no cost to the local taxpayer. Those dollars cannot be used for operations. Now, it's a balancing act in that if we're lowering the debt service rate, any increases in any of those other rates balances. So there's a net zero effect, or not as great of an effect as there would be without them. But like I said, what's important to note is those impact fees cannot be used for operations, but still something obviously we're all advocating for and will continue to do so.
Okay, we will continue to take questions. Anything online that we may have not covered that need to cover here? Okay, so team back there, well, I guess we'll keep that chat open here for a little bit in case we get some more, at least another 10 or 20 minutes. If there are no additional questions here, we certainly will stick around. Some of you may want to just talk to us. Would you like to? Okay. Mrs. Klein is one of our board members, so thank you for being here.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Klein. I am one of the District 1 representatives of the school board, and part of the reason why I joined the school board was because I am a graduate of Indian River, and I was educated in the Indian River District K through 12. And I remember various referenda throughout the years. The first one I remember was for the construction of the new Selbyville Middle School. And I remember it not passing at first. And I went to both Selbyville Middle Schools, the new one and the old one. And I remember when that didn't pass and how disappointed I was, feeling that maybe the community didn't value its students. And then we went back and passed and went to this beautiful school. I just want you to remember that students are aware of this. Teachers are aware of this. It's not a bluff that we might have to displace some teachers or release some from their positions. This is serious, and I value a well-educated community. I'm sure all of you do. So please consider that when you go to make your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Peden is also a board member with our school district.
Hello. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did I see or hear that the Indian River School District has the lowest in the entire Sussex County? Okay, so yes, thank you for being very frugal with the money and taking care of it. That's amazing that we're the lowest in Sussex County. I can tell you that I had 3 children that went through the school, very successful. They're friends going into medical school. Some were attorneys, some were nurses, some were police officers. So it's amazing what your schools do. Although my kids are graduated, they will not benefit from this referendum through as a student. But just seeing the amazing things that the students are doing, I will be voting yes for the referendum.
Thank you. Okay, again, we'll keep that chat open and we will respond to any additional questions coming in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your willingness to listen to what we're asking of our community. Mrs. Smith and I will stick around. We'll answer any additional questions that you may have. Please, if you have additional questions that you think of after, the website is a wealth of knowledge. There's a tab for referendum. There are some really amazing videos that were produced by one of our staff members on his own time to help to illustrate all things related to the referendum. I think it does a much better job than I do with explaining it, so that is helpful. Please share that information with those that are in your circles or widely, or even on your social medias. Just, we want folks to come out on the 20th, and we want them to be well informed about this information. So please go to the website. We have a hotline you can call with questions. And again, we'll stick around. Thank you so much for being here. Have a good night.